You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi, and thanks for coming back again to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. I must say, I like the tagline, the ultimate midlife crisis, as a bit of fun. I'm not sure it applies anymore. If you've been listening to the show for some time now, and I know that many of you have, you'll understand that most people aren't in any sort of crisis when they go to the Appalachian or other long-distance trails. They're far from a crisis. They've decided to fulfill an elusive dream and are probably making the least crisis-driven decision of their lives. Listening to all these people, you'll have heard the joy, the unexpected kindnesses, the camaraderie, sometimes the sadness and the pain of hiking. Nobody has talked about being in a crisis at the outset. I'm going to keep the tagline, but I wouldn't want anybody to be misled by it. It was a joke against me, really, when I first did this. Deciding to hike a long-distance trail may well be the most rational decision of your life. It certainly was in mine. Talking about rationality, today's guest is a very endearing Irishman, Paul Maguire. Paul was an utter delight to chat with, having a humour that was never far from the surface, which meant, of course, that we spent a lot of time laughing. A couple of months ago, one of my iTunes reviewers said that I laugh way too much, and he thinks it's a false laugh. For you, whoever you were, I'd advise you to miss this one. I'm having far too good a time laughing with Paul. We've also got the final member of the Mighty Blue class of 2019, and after the two Fab 50s last week, this time we have a charming young woman in her 20s, Margi Miims, or Fireball. Her enthusiasm is infectious, and in fact the whole show is pretty upbeat today. We're now down to the last few chapters of The Year We Seize the Day, with my lovely niece Laura taking care of 3 chapters today and preparing to record the final chapters for next week. Oh, and for those of you wondering what is happening to my feverish preparations for the trail, I can at last tell you about some progress made after a day of driving about 400 miles across Florida and back. I'm going to tell you about that after speaking with Margi. So let's get on with the main event, which is Paul Maguire, called, not surprisingly, Irish Paul. Here's Paul. Okay, this week we've got Paul Maguire as our guest. Hi, Paul. How are you?
Hi, Steve. I'm good.
And I know you're good because you've just told me you've got a pint of Guinness in your hand, so you are the stereotypical Irishman.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's an imaginary pint, but I have plenty of practice, so I think I can do this.
I'm sure you can. Now, you've got precisely the trail name that I was trying to avoid because I was convinced that I'd be English Steve or Mr. Bean or British Baldy or something like that. How did you come to be Irish Paul?
Yeah, because, well, I'm hiking the trail and everybody can see or hear that I've got a different accent and everybody's asking me questions about where I'm from. Mm-hmm. So, they say, what's your trail name? Where are you from? And if I have a trail name called Irish, it sort of answers all the questions. And that's really where it came from. So I also liked the idea of having the Irish connection. And I was unique on the trail. There was nobody else called Irish and there was nobody else from Ireland. So I was very proud to be Irish Paul.
So what do you think about that? That's interesting. From the point of view of these trail names, when you do go on the trail, you can assume a different persona if you choose to. I'm sure some people do. And I know that before I went away, I needed to do something to become Mighty Blue. And I literally shaved my head. I got my head totally shaved.
Wow.
Did you find that having a different name made any difference to you?
It does sort of wrap up your trail persona. I felt that my name was sufficiently unique and it was sufficiently memorable for other people so that when people met me, everybody seemed to remember my name very easily. Whereas some names are very good, they're very apt, but there's a story behind a lot of the names. And unless you remember the story, you don't remember the name. Whereas with Irish, it was always easy. And I found if I met someone after a couple of weeks, and if I was with some people and we met someone after a few weeks, it was usually myself that people remembered in terms of names, whereas
Yes.
they didn't seem to remember the other names. So I didn't do it for that reason, but that was one of the good things. People seem to remember the name. So I was really, really happy with that name.
It's funny, I found that people I speak to who I knew on the trail refer to me as Mighty Blue, and I often wonder who are they talking about, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of the emails I get are written to Mighty Blue as well, not to Steve, and I always find that kind of odd as well.
Yeah.
Last week on the show we had a lady called Lotta Anvret from Sweden, and she was rather hoping that her visa may be extended to complete her hike this year. Now, the irony of ironies, I was talking to you about doing this conversation. You said you were able to handle the visa and give yourself a few more days, weren't you?
I was really fortunate. You hear the bad stories maybe sometimes about Homeland Security and so forth. And we have a Homeland Security office in Dublin Airport.
Sure.
When you go into that office, you're effectively in the US. And my visa and my return booking, my return flight booking were the same day. Which is fine. I wanted to maximize the possibility of staying 180 days in the US.
Sure.
And I met this lovely lady in Homeland Security, and she said that Mr. Maguire, you're cutting it fine there. If you're going to be late, you're not going to make your flight. So her option was to ask me to rebook that flight for maybe 5 days or 4 days prior to the visa expiry date. But guess what? She actually took my visa, and she said, "I'm going to give you another 4 days." And how generous that was, and how practical it was. And in fairness, that was the first piece of trail magic I had on the trail before I even left Ireland.
How about that? Before you got trail magic before you even set on the trail.
I did, and I have to say, and I'd like to say it, that everybody I met in the States were so generous to me, and so positive and so giving, and all they want to do is find something they can do for you, and they'll do it. So it was fantastic. It was my first time in the States, 57 years of age, and my first time in the States, and I so enjoyed it, and I will be back.
I must say, Paul, that's not a quality one would almost intuitively attribute to the Homeland Security people. But if they lived in Ireland, I guess they were, things were. Were they Americans or were they Irish? They were Americans, I presume.
They were American. Yeah.
So when you get into the country to the US, did you have to go to a different line because you've already gone through security by then?
Yeah,
so what did you do?
I've done everything. I just get off the plane, pick up my pack, and I'm good to go. So I have nothing else to do.
That is a real result, I tell you.
It was fantastic, and that was the good fortune I had from the moment I started, and that trend continued the whole way through. Everybody I met were so very good,
That's the thing that nearly every guest says, Paul, that they're always surprised by the kindness of people on the trail. And I don't know whether it's the trail or whether it's the people who it attracts. Maybe it's the people who the trail attracts, but really it's quite something to see how people respond to you when you're out there. And I'm going again this year, and I'm looking forward to that so very much.
Yes, yeah. And it's going to be good. It's going to be good for you. I suppose it's a different world, like in the world that a lot of us have lived in or do live in, where we've pressure from commercial aspects, we've got deadlines, targets, all that sort of stuff. And so people don't want to give so much because they have to give of themselves or give of their time or asset. But on the trail, it's the values are different, and it allows people to give in a much more natural way. They don't have commercial deadlines. They don't have financial deadlines. They can be themselves. They don't have those pressures of the outside world.
Yeah. Didn't you actually find also that some of the towns that associated with the trail towns themselves, they were full of kind people as well? It's almost as if they were getting the feeling from the trail. Didn't you find that?
Totally. Yeah. Like, it's a great way, again, as I say, it's my first time in the States, so it was a great way for me to see areas of the States and to see small towns and people in small villages. And, communities where you get to talk to people. It's not like in a city where you can be with 2 million other people and no one gets to talk to you because everybody's so busy. But out there on the trail, you pull into a trail town somewhere and people will talk to you. It's just an extension of that sort of mindset, which it's just so positive.
Yes.
It's so positive, and I hope it's something that I've been able to carry forward since I've come from the trail to back to home.
Yeah, I'm sure. Now, you come from Ireland, we know,
Yeah.
but where in Ireland are you from?
I'm a place called Drogheda, or Drogheda as it's spelt, but Drogheda we pronounce it. It's
Yes.
50 kilometres or 30 miles north of Dublin on the east coast of Ireland. Yeah.
So how did an Irishman from Drogheda find his way to the Appalachian Trail? I mean, what's that all about?
I went for I went for a hike here in Ireland. I hiked the Wicklow Way. I went for a 1 day hike. I liked it. I kept going the next day. And after a couple of days, I hiked the whole thing. It's a relatively short walk. It's 132 kilometers. And I came home and I started looking up hiking things. And when you go to Google and you look up hiking things, the Appalachian Trail is going to find you, and it did. And
Yes.
the more I looked at it, the more I wanted to look at it. And obviously we have all those wonderful video pieces on YouTube from obviously Dixie and lots and lots of other people. Mr. Spielberg was particularly good, I thought, and all very inspiring, And
that 5-minute video of Spielberg's is the best thing I've ever seen on the Appalachian Trail.
It's such a tremendous production, and it's fantastic videography, fantastic photography, and he really gets the message across. As Dixie obviously does as well. She's tremendous. She's outstanding, But there are so many good people there that are making videos and posting them on YouTube. But it's like anything else, you see a video on YouTube and someone's telling you that hill is a hill, and it doesn't look like a hill on YouTube. But when you go out there, you fairly quickly discover, whoa, what happened here? So there's the reality of it as well, and you've got to go and do it. It's one of those things you can talk to someone about how nice the wine is or how nice the Guinness is, but until you taste it, you've got to experience it yourself. And what an experience!
Absolutely. And what was your family's reaction to your decision to actually go on the trail last year?
Well, I'll never forget my mother's reaction, and it involved throwing our eyes to the heavens and said, like, what the hell? I mean, what's wrong with hiking around Ireland if you have to hike? Why are you going all that way to do all that stuff? Why do you have to go to the States? Why do you have to leave your wife and family for so long? And there's all those crazy animals and other things out there in the States, like, you're crazy. Other people like ask me, they're talking about things like distance, and like in Ireland we're in kilometers, so it's like 3,500 kilometers, and which is a nice number because it sounds more than miles.
Yes, damn right. Yeah,
the bigger number.
I felt that doing the Camino, actually.
Yeah. So I always walk 100 kilometers. I never walk 60 miles. So
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So then we talk about like height gained, and you're saying, well, it's 448,000 feet or 135,000 meters, and they're looking at you because you can't comprehend that.
No, you really can't. You're right.
So then I talk to them about things like, well, if you want to try and comprehend it, but let's look at things like flights of stairs, and I gave them some comparisons about things that like flights of stairs. A local mountain has like 200 flights of stairs. I climbed Kilimanjaro the year before. It has 2,500 flights of stairs. Everest has 3,500 flights of stairs, and the AT has 58,000 flights of stairs. So you cannot.
This was supposed to make him feel better. This was supposed to make him feel better, was it?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and then of course they're all on about the bears are going to eat you and the snakes are going to bite you and all that sort of stuff, and of course the most ferocious thing of all is the tick, the little small guy. Everything else is actually fine. So yeah, people have preconceived ideas about what it's going to be like out there, but
They certainly do, don't they?
yeah, they do.
So, so did you calm anybody's fears? Obviously not by telling them that. Did you? And what was your family's reaction when you did go? I mean, is your wife okay with this?
Yeah, well, my wife, is a total saint. She should be sainted at this stage for all she's endured and having to listen to me. I spent quite some time talking about the Appalachian Trail to her,
Right.
and we went to a hotel for a couple of days to sit and actually talk this thing through.
Oh, right. Was she reluctant for you to go, or was she happy to just talk it through? Was she kind of waiting to see what way the conversation took, or did you have to actually persuade her?
Well, no, like at first it was a case of I'm thinking about doing the Appalachian Trail, and she's, oh, that's great, Paul. Where's that? And I told her where it was, and how long will you be gone? 6 months. 6 months. What are you gonna do? Six months? Are you crazy? And but then I just left that alone for a couple of days, and then I came back to her, and behind every guy that has some success out there, there's a great woman, and she just came back and said, "Go and do it. You have to do it because you've got to do it." So she was with me all the way, and then there were just practical aspects that we needed to. If I was going to be away for so long, there were practical aspects at home that we needed to cover. So
of course, yeah,
we went to a local hotel, maybe up the road, and we stayed there for a couple of days. And
was this to get away from your mother?
and
then
you see you've got the in-laws as well, because it's a case of what's he doing to our daughter, leaving her like this, and like we have a small business here at home, and does that mean that like she's looking after us and she's looking after the family, and now she's going to have to look after them? Like, what's this guy doing? Like, so I fall into that category sometimes, of that dreadful husband, so you've got to overcome a couple of things, and we've got to discuss those things. So we discussed them, and we had some aids to helping us discuss these things, because in a hotel where you're checked in and you don't have to drive and you can have your meals, and the aids that we had, there's the Guinness is flowing, and Aideen likes the Merlot, and so after numerous indulgences on the Guinness and the Merlot, the answer was yes.
So basically, what you're actually saying in a very Irish way is you basically got her drunk as you agreed to.
Well, I wouldn't
Excellent.
like to say that. We asked the question the next day. So the next day is the tester. Do you still think the next day? So the next day, in the absence of the Guinness and the absence of the Merlot, the answer was still yes. So she's been behind me 100%.
You do need that, don't you? You need that support. You can't be worrying about what's being worried about back home, can you? You have to know that your spouse or your significant other is there supporting you, whatever, almost not so much whatever you do, but in this particular case, whatever you do. So good for you that you actually had that.
If it didn't work for both of us, then it didn't work. That was the simple as that, But she's always been, she's always encouraged me to do the things the crazy notions that come into my mind. And I'm thinking of the PCT for next year, 2020. And, like she's, the first reaction was the same, as the last time. So
you're gonna be either be spending a lot of money on Merlot, or you're just gonna be running low. You're gonna be running low on permissions. But now you went to Kilimanjaro. I mean that was quite a trek in itself. So when you were ready to do the AT, did you find that the gear you'd chosen for your previous hiking was what you needed for the AT, or did you start from scratch for the AT?
Okay, so I started from scratch for the AT, and I bought all the gear. I did the typical thing. I got the spreadsheet, listed everything out, got the weights, got the cumulative total for the pack. Of course, it was too heavy, and I had to go back and look at everything and get things lighter. And then I went off. I have a panel van, and I did a semi-conversion on it to turn it so that I could sleep in it. So I put my kayak into the back of the van, I have a
Right.
bed that comes down over the kayak. I have a kitchen and a stove and fridge and all those good things. And I went and did a shakedown hike. So
Okay.
I spent 4 months in Europe,
Wow.
through France, the southern French Alps, through Italy, Slovenia, Austria, Germany, Switzerland. I kayaked all around the Alps. I cycled the Tour de France routes in the Alps, and I
Wow.
hiked about 500 kilometers, gaining about 12,500 meters over the period of a couple of weeks or
That is
4 or
some
5 days.
shakedown.
Yeah,
That
so
is
that
some
was
shakedown hike. Yeah.
that was the shakedown, and I brought my gear for the AT on that, and then I thought I would go to Italy to the Dolomites, and
Right.
I was having a chat with some people in Switzerland after when we got to a bar, and they were telling me about Kilimanjaro. So I had a quarter of the pint of beer drank, and I, I,
I
I,
know where this is going.
yeah, So I text passport control, my wife, and I asked if it was possible. Would she mind if I went to Kilimanjaro? And of course, she said yes. And then I looked up when there'd be a full moon in Kilimanjaro, and there was one due in October. So I looked up the travel company, and there was a slot available that would coincide with the full moon, because I wanted to summit Kilimanjaro on the full moon.
Oh,
and
cool.
and it cost me like 3.5 grand, and because I was going in a couple of weeks, it was only 4 weeks away or 5 weeks away. I had to pay the whole lot there and then, so I made the payment, and so Kilimanjaro was booked before I had the point down to halfways. So I then said, well,
For an Irishman, that's fast.
that is very fast. Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't hang around with our points, But
No.
so then I thought I shouldn't go to the Dolomites. I should go home and spend some time at home, and so I did. And then a month later, I went to Killy and did all that, and that was great.
Nice.
Like,
Very nice too.
it's a relatively easy trek, but there is altitude. It's like 5,895 meters. So
Yeah, it's a long way up there. Yeah,
yeah,
that is a heck of a
you've
long
got
way up
real
there.
altitude up there. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was.
But let's get back to the AT.
Yes,
Get back to the
yes,
AT.
yes,
You were
indeed.
ready for the AT. You had a big shakedown hike, and you
Yeah.
had a climb up Kilimanjaro as well.
Yeah.
And of course, being Irish, there was just one day that you could start, wasn't there? And
It
you
was,
did.
yeah. So I applied the scientific rationale. When do you start the AT? Well, when is St. Patrick's Day? St. Patrick's Day, the 17th of March. Well, that's the day I
Oh
got to
dear.
start. So I started on the 17th.
And in retrospect, was that a good day for you? But was it a good time to start? Do you think, or
Yeah.
had you thought about it differently and not been Irish? Would you have started another date, or are you happy with your choice of date?
I'm if I had it all again, I would not change a thing, because
Right.
if I think the week or so before, maybe there was quite a bit of it would have left me with snow in the Smokies, whereas the time I came through the Smokies, it was nice, no snow.
Nice, lovely.
I'd like snow, but
Yeah, not in the smokers. You wouldn't.
no, I suppose not.
I got that there as well. So, what were the early miles like? You were they what you'd expected, or was it tougher than what the YouTube videos actually showed? Because it normally is, isn't it?
Yeah, the YouTube videos just don't convey the physical effort,
Yeah.
So you've got to get out there and push it. You've got to be able to get used to listening to your heart pounding away in your ears and hiking to the rhythm of that pounding. So you'd find yourself sort of hiking up a hill or something, and almost you almost get a type of mental chant going that is coordinated with the sound of your heart and your breathing rhythm, and you're going, and it could be the weirdest thing, but it works. It worked for me anyway.
That's interesting, Paul. I remember thinking that at the time. I've not thought about it since, but I agree with you. That's exactly what I did as well. Yeah, you do get that rhythm. That rhythm for you is literally how your blood is pumping around your body, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And like there were certainly days when I would like that rhythm to produce a faster pace, but it produced the pace it produced, and like everybody has to, hike their own hike and so forth, So that's what I did, and that got and that continued to the very last day.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you being abroad from away from Ireland and away from your family, there are logistics you have to consider, which a lot of Americans haven't had to worry about because they can get packages sent to them. What did you do for resupply? Did you simply go into towns, get the stuff and go back out, or did you stay in towns much more? What did you do?
Well, I sent a query to Scoutmaster, who was doing the trail ahead of me. He started, I think, in January or February.
Okay.
And I just asked him a question, and he replied really quickly on his YouTube channel. And I said, what's the story with resupply? I can't really organize, bounce boxes and getting things sent to me by friends and relations because I unfortunately don't know anybody in the States. So can I just pick up stuff along the way? And he said, yeah, that's exactly what you do. So I didn't worry about any of that stuff. I would just look at the map, see when the next potential resupply was. AWOL guide obviously is fantastic, as is Gutux.
Yeah.
And you've got the information there. You don't have to worry about it. It's 4 days away. It's 3 days away. It's 5 days away.
Yeah, and you plan accordingly. You have to, when you go into town, you have to look where the next place is, of course. Because when you go into town, you want to know if you need 1 day of food or 3 days of food or 5 days of food.
Exactly.
But funny enough, my wife used to send me tons and tons of food. So I was giving away food. I was getting about 10 days worth of food, and I just didn't need all that. So and it's something this time I will definitely be resupplying on the trail, and I won't have to worry about having too much food. In many ways, that obviously adds to the weight you're carrying.
And you're going to get variety then as well.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, you definitely will, because there are days when you could cheerfully throw away your oatmeal. I'm quite sure. How did you adapt to the somewhat feral lifestyle of a through hiker? Because
that's a good question.
More and more of our generation are going, and I've noticed that more and more. A lot of them come on the show, and so it's something that we all have to face. How did you find it?
I woke up one day, I don't know how far I was into the trail, but I sort of, the thought occurred to me one day, when did it suddenly become normal to waking up in this bag? When did it become normal to put on yesterday's underwear, which is now soaking wet and freezing cold? Doesn't do much for one's manhood, etc. When did it become normal to go to the bathroom the way you do? When did it become normal to actually not worry about walking out in the rain? Here at home, you walk out in the rain and you think, oh, it's raining, I'm going to get wet. You can't do that. Of course you can do that. Do you know what I mean? Why can't you? Why, there's a puddle there and it's going to go over your boots. Like at home here, you would stop, build a bridge, go around it, do whatever you have to do. You just, on the trail teaches you all that conditioning that you have to avoiding all these things and not being able to endure all those things. No, that's gone, and you just become, as you say, feral. And I don't know when that happened, but I was like the wild man from Borneo. I grew this beard, never had a beard. You know what I mean?
I think natural tendencies must kick in somewhere down the line. Maybe it's some, and I remember saying to one young guy, he said, "I'm almost worried about how easy this has become so disgusting just in a few days." And it really is, us older people, we come from a different generation, and because we do, sometimes we're a bit restrained in these things. But I'm looking forward to that feral lifestyle again. I really am.
But I would wash virtually every evening after the hike. I would take a container of water and find a tree somewhere and just go behind the tree and wash down, and I thought that was important just for skin health and so forth.
Sure.
Because you don't want to get cuts or infections or any of those type of things going on.
No, you're right. Yeah.
So it was important, and for the benefit of those around me as well. I do remember often meeting people that were out on day hikes or section hikes, and they smell so good, and even their dogs smelt good.
You don't smell other hikers. I never smelled other hikers. Did you? I just thought I thought we all stank, and because I could smell myself, I guess. But yeah, you're right. But when day hikers come past, you can literally smell them, can't you?
Yeah,
and they smell nice. You're right.
They
yeah.
do, and I found myself sniffing the air on the trail to try and catch the last lovely fragrance of those people and their dogs, and like that's
funny.
you don't normally do that, but there were some people on the trail who, most people you don't smell them, but there were some people on the trail that you did smell, and these were the people that were doing the how many days can you go without a shower challenge, and those guys, they thought they didn't smell, but I think those guys had something wrong with their nose or something, because like you could smell those guys coming behind you, even no matter which way the wind was blowing, So, yes, those guys.
Unfortunately, I think I was one of those guys. So I did go quite a long time. And did you tend to hike alone? Talking about smelling, did you tend to hike alone, or did you become part of a trail family, or did you just kind of move in and out of groups?
I think we did have a fairly I had a trail family, which I was delighted to have. Sure. Started out with a couple of real nice people, Keith Raymond, Turbo. Matt from Australia was Matt the Aussie, was Mozzie.
All right.
And Jeff Stafford was Crunch Time, because Crunch Time, he was under pressure for time, so he was called Crunch Time. And Pete Broman, who is now Easy Pete, is now my American brother, and I hiked for a very long time with Pete, and I hope to meet Pete again. Pete, in fact, was over in Ireland. He came over in January, and he spent a week here, and we went to see Tom Crean's pub. Tom Crean, he was one of the Arctic explorers with Scott and Shackleton.
All right.
And
cool. Very cool.
Yeah, so Pete was here, and so Pete's my American brother now, and we hiked a lot together and got to know each other really well. And what a guy Pete is. And Pete then, through Pete, I got to know some friends of Pete's. That would be Janine and Jerry Hesco and the family, and they allowed me to stay in their house while Pete had to get off the trail for a few days. And I was just one of the family immediately, like it was just amazing, it was really, really amazing.
Yeah.
So many good people, Seven and Double Tap, and that's Paul and Amber, and Gravity Jinx in Kenya, G-Bolt, obviously, who G-Bolt yourself.
That's right.
Interviewed G-Bolt,
that's right,
and Bruce RTK, I hiked quite a bit with him. And then my son came over, and he hiked with me for almost a month. And so I, and at the end of that time, we took 6 days off in New York, which was great.
Oh, what happened there? Well, it wasn't me cutting Paul off, as I'm sure many of you thought, as he was naming everybody he met on the trail like an Oscar winner. Promise you it wasn't. No, I'm currently staying in a place with very dodgy Wi-Fi, and I sometimes simply cut out. Anyway, by the time we got back on, I think that Paul had named pretty much everybody, so I just ploughed on. Okay, we lost you there a second, Paul, but we're back on it now. And you had a very interesting reaction to your summit day. Tell us what you were feeling as you touched that brown sign.
So myself and Kingsman, who had hiked together for about 6 weeks or something, both decided to summit at the exact same moment, and we both approached the sign. And I suppose you're waiting for the trumpets to go and the something big to happen. And it was a little bit surreal. I was at the end. What now? I didn't know what to think, really. And we continued away off down the trail, and then it started to sink in, that I'm not going to meet any of the trail family tonight. I'm not going to meet any of those other people I meet on the trail.
Yes.
My God, this is not good, It was bittersweet. I was happy to have made it to the end. I was happy that I was closer to being home with my wife, etc. But I
Sure.
wasn't going to be with my trail family again, and I'd really come to. They were a part of my life, and I was going to miss them. So.
And did you miss them?
I did and do. There's not a day that goes by and that I'm not in some means or manner in the Appalachian Trail.
Yes.
Everything I do, people I talk to, I've done a lot of different things through the last 57 years, but people seem to define me now by, you're the guy that went to the Appalachian Trail. Last night I went to a leaving party for an previous for a guy that was leaving the company I used to work for, and a lot of those people followed me on Facebook, and now, so I just spent the entire night talking about the Appalachian Trail, and
Yes.
and
Yes.
I'm happy to do it. I would talk about the Appalachian Trail all day, and you just have to get a mix. You have to understand when people want to talk to you and when people don't want to talk to you. So,
Yeah.
but
Well,
everything
bad
I
news.
do.
That's going to stick with you. That's going to stick with you forever, man. You're never going to change that. You're going to carry on talking about it.
And I hope it does stick with me. It's an immensely positive thing to have done.
Yes.
It was so special to have met all the wonderful people that I met and seen all the positivity out there. There were days when I hated that trail, and the days when.
But you wouldn't have given it up, though, would you? That's part of your experience of it, isn't it?
Yeah, no, you won't give it up. But I think it set me up certainly for the rest of my life, in the sense of, get your expectations right. Understand that things are not always going to be, the way they look in those YouTube videos. There's a reality, but the greater the pain, sometimes the greater the gain. It's tough work to hike to the top of a mountain, but when you get there, you have that view, you have that experience, you have that achievement.
You've worked for it as well. You've worked for it.
No pain, no gain. No, isn't that what they say? Is no rain, no pain, no main.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And funny enough, I was going to ask you. My last question was going to be something. Was there anything you got unexpected from the trail? Something that the YouTubers hadn't shown you, but you've already said that really the YouTubers themselves, they can show this wonderful, what looks like a relatively easy path, but there's something once you get out there that you just almost, I don't think you can articulate it properly. You certainly can't film it properly, and you just have to experience it, don't you?
You do, and it's. I think one of the things I got from the trail was I had been removed from home for 5 months, and that gave me an appreciation for actually what I had at home. And that was a valuable thing for me to have, that was, I had some time with Luke, my son, who hiked on the trail with me, as I mentioned, and we got some time together, so it's a little bit like that song, Cat in the Cradle, I was always busy working. He wanted to play. I didn't get to play with him maybe as much as I should have or could have, and now he's finished college and he's going to start work. We got some great time together, great bonding, great, I got to know Luke a lot better, and hopefully he got to know me a lot better. He knows that I'm not as fast a walker as I'd like to be. But, that was good. That was fantastic, so.
Well, I'm so pleased that Bruce mentioned you and that I should get in touch with you, because firstly, you've certainly, I'm sure you've eased Lotta's mind a bit by getting 4 extra days on your on your visa. But you've embraced the trail, you've really enjoyed the trail, and you learn so much on the trail. Like everybody else who goes out there, we all have a different hike, don't we? So I'm so pleased you came on and chatted to us about it.
There were times when I hated it, but the more I hated it, then the more I love it now.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
So,
yeah, it's going to stay with you forever. So
totally. Yeah.
And if you do the PCT, I'm sure that'd be just as magical for you as well next year.
Yeah, I'm listening to things on the PCT every day, and I'm almost there already. So, yeah, I don't want to commit to doing it, but at this point,
Yeah.
I do know in the back of my mind I'm most likely going to do it, or going to try and do it anyway.
Well, good for you, man. And I really appreciate you coming on, and we'll chat again sometime, okay? Especially if you do the PCT.
Absolutely,
All
absolutely. Right. And I want to say a big thanks to Pete and to Dave, two principal people that I worked with, and they got me to the end, and I appreciate that. That's and right. I appreciate their friendship and everybody else's as well, and there are so many.
Okay, mate. Well, look, good talking to you, and we'll catch up again. Take it easy.
You, Dave. Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye.
What a great guy. Paul sent me a charming email later saying that with all the technical difficulties that we had on this recording, even if it didn't work out as a recording, he'd still loved chatting about the trail with me. It gets that way when you do a through hike. You just want somebody to talk to about it, and preferably somebody who understands what you're talking about. I remember a year or so ago, Kelly Anderson, or Sleeping Beauty, a previous guest on the show, came to my home and we started chatting about the trail, and my wife quickly realised that we just wanted to talk about the trail and literally nothing else. She was fine about it, of course, but she just fed us and left us to it. Paul is feeling that way now. He just can't get enough of it. What about the Homeland Security lady who tacked on a few days to his visa? What a result. Listening back to my talk with Paul, I noticed how wistful he became near the end, and his kind of nothingness at Katahdin must have come as a surprise to him. It was only later that the enormity of what he'd done and what his immediate future looked like that he felt the emotion that so many of us feel. Now, at last, the last member of the class of 2019, Margi Miims, reached out a few weeks ago, and I got online with her to record this incredibly enthusiastic young woman as she's counting down the days before she heads out. Here's Margaret, or Margie, or Fireball. I'd like to introduce you to Margaret, or as she just told me, Margi Miims. Hi, Margie, how are you?
I'm great, Steve. How are you doing?
Well, I know you're full of the joyous springs. You're waiting to go on your hike already because you sound incredibly excited about it all, as you should do as well, by the way. So I'd like you to introduce yourself, your name, your age, where you live, and your start date on the AT, if you've actually chosen it already.
Yeah, so I'm Margi Miims. I'm 26 years old and live in Denver, Colorado. Mm-hmm. My start date will be Friday, March 8th, and right. I'm so excited. I can't wait.
I can tell. I can read. You sent me some great pictures of some dehydrated beef. 5 pounds of dehydrated beef doesn't dehydrate down to too much, does it?
No, it's so small.
Yeah, surprise, yeah. So have you done a lot of dehydrating then?
I am. My kitchen is constantly being filled with odd smells of vegetables and meats and nice. Tortellinis.
Nice. Oh, you're the person to befriend on the trail then. You'll have all this food. It'd be great. So
that's right.
Is this your first long distance hike?
Yes, so this will be my first long distance hike over about 100 miles. I did the first 140 miles of the Appalachian Trail in May. So from Springer to the NOC.
Was that planned to do just the first 140, or was it just was that your sort of shakedown hike?
Yeah, so it was actually to see if I wanted to do the entire trail or if I was more of a weekend backpacker. But I was so sad leaving after those 8 days that I just couldn't wait to come back and finish the whole thing.
I bet you were. So you did 140 miles, you say, in 8 days?
Yeah, so it was a little too fast. I'll definitely be going a lot slower on my through hike, just starting with 8 to 10 miles for the first week and under 12 miles the second week. But yeah, definitely went too fast the first time.
And what did it feel like? You know, you got into the feeling of it. You didn't hit any. Did you hit any of the bubble? I suppose they were all ahead of you by then, were they?
No, yeah, I didn't hit the bubble because it was in May, but I met a lot of people starting their through hike and hiked with them, you know, for the entire time.
Oh, you must have been devastated to have to go home then when they were going to be going on.
It was heartbreaking. I was so sad.
I bet it was. Now, you sent me an email earlier on, and this next question is, how long has the AT been on your radar? It's been on your radar for some time, isn't it?
Yeah, I first heard about the AT, I think back when I was in college. So it's been about 8 years now that I've been absolutely obsessed with it. So it's been a long time coming.
You've read a lot of books, seen a lot of videos, and tested all your kit and want to change your gear all the time, I would imagine. Is it just the AT, or is it hiking in general?
It's definitely hiking in general. I'm so lucky to live in Colorado. The weather's amazing. The mountains are incredible. I've been hiking little sections of the CDT out here and backpacking trips. And the Appalachian Trail is just, that's the epitome for me.
Yeah, it's funny. Some people, I had somebody recently tell me that the AT was one they just didn't want to do. It was the PCT he wanted to do and the CDT, but the AT not so much because it was too much of a party trail. I don't think you're going to, I know it can be for some people, but you can go for a long time by yourself on the AT if you choose to, and you can spend a lot of time with people as well. Your hike is going to be however you make your hike. So I'm sure it's going to be fine for you.
Yeah, I'm sure the shelters are kind of where people congregate, right? And then you can stealth camp if you want to have some alone time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so you can make the hike exactly as you want it, which is one of the reasons I'm happy to be doing it again, because I think this is just going to be such a different hike for me than it was first time. And how are you able to take all that time off work, or are you not working, or are you at college still?
So, yeah, I'm really lucky. I worked for corporate for a few years and then actually started flipping houses this past year. So I flipped my second house ending in November. So I'm really lucky to have the time to take off and then flip another house when I get back.
I presume flipping a house in November, you say, means you made enough money to go on the whole trip, which is pretty darn good.
Yes. Yeah, the Denver market is pretty good right now, so I'm lucky in that sense.
Yeah, I went to Denver last summer actually, and there was building there going on all over the place. It was amazing, it really was.
Yeah, how'd you like Denver?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it there. I was at the Outdoor Retailers show. I went as media. I got a media pass, which was great, and I was interviewing people for the podcast, and I got loads of free gear, which was even better.
Free stuff's always great.
Yeah, nothing wrong with free stuff at all. So you're obviously going northbound. Did you ever consider doing either a flip-flop or a southbound hike?
An oboe, you mean?
Yeah, I do. Well, good girl, good girl.
I thought that was so funny. No, I totally am on the same page with you, Steve, in the sense that Mount Katahdin is just, the crown jewel. I couldn't imagine ending anywhere else but Mount Katahdin. So northbound's been really the only consideration. Interestingly,
we had somebody a couple of weeks ago, Sally Forth, Joanna Blue, who was Sally Forth on the trail, and she really, really gave a great explanation of why it was still so great to finish at Springer. I'd always thought it was a horrible, scrubby little path, but for her, it was a wonderful finish. So, and I love the fact that she put it that way as well. So, how have you been putting this gear together? Have you been doing it for the last 7 or 8 years, or have you just got the recent stuff to get as lightweight as possible?
Yeah, so I've tested my gear quite a bit, backpacking in Colorado and then doing the first 8 days of the trail last year. Sure. So I've got pretty much everything squared away. I told you before, but I got the duplex, so I'm yet to use that. So I'm excited about that.
Did you so the kit you took on the AT last year, did that all work on the AT pretty well?
Yes, it worked very well. I was happy with the lightweightness of the Z-Packs Arc Blast pack. Right. I don't really need all the pockets. And if you do need pockets, you can always, add them on or order them. But I was really excited about just not having as much weight.
I think it's one of the things that I didn't take sufficiently into account first time, and I'm definitely going to take into account more this time. There is no question, for every pound you can leave off your back, it's going to be much easier for you to do the hike. So, and especially at my age now, I want to make sure that I'm going to be able to carry this stuff all the way there. So you wearing shoes or boots? What do you actually wear on your feet?
Yeah, so I'm wearing Ultra Lone Peak Trail Runners.
Right.
So pretty lightweight, and I actually got some toe blisters on the AT in May, wearing different shoes, and I found that the wider toe box worked a lot better for me.
Yeah, I actually, when I hiked the Camino this year, I wore sandals for about 350, 400 miles.
Did you really?
They were fantastic, but I just couldn't imagine using them on the AT because of all the rocks and the route. So I won't be doing that. And And when as you say, you live around Colorado, so you do hike around there anyway. Are you pretty well prepared physically for this hike?
Yeah, so I've been hiking or walking every other day, 7 to 9 miles, either in the mountains or around the neighborhood. And then the days that I don't hike, I do a hot yoga class. It's a vinyasa flow. And so that's kind of what I've been doing, and I hope it works, but we'll see.
Yeah. I've got to tell you, walking around the neighbourhood doesn't in any way resemble going on the AT. I was doing that as well. I was doing it as well. That is just nothing to do with it. So, but you know what? The physicality takes care of itself. Everybody knows this. You know, you're going to struggle for a while, but then you just get used to it. And I was actually interviewing somebody before you, and we were talking about when you get your hiking legs. And I remember the particular moment that I got them. I was actually going up a hill. I was ahead of two young lads, 17 and 19, and going away from them. I couldn't believe it. I thought there was something wrong with them. Not that my legs were there. I just suddenly got it, you know.
So how far along in your hike did that take?
That was just outside Irwin, Tennessee. So I was in my third state. It took me about a couple of 100 miles. Yeah. So that's the physical side of it, and you're going to get that anyway. The mental side of it is something everybody talks about. How do you think you're going to cope when you have those really, really tough times? Because you definitely will have tough times.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm actually most concerned about on the trail is the mental part of it. I'm a pretty positive person in general, but I know that, you know, after having a week of straight rain or an injury or whatever it may be, that it's going to get pretty tough. So I have a game plan in place just in case that does happen.
Oh, tell me, what's the game plan?
Yeah, so I'm going to go into town for 2 days and get a massage and sit in a hot tub.
I've got to tell you, some of those trail towns are not massage and hot tub places, just so you know.
Yeah, it might have to be like a tub or something, a pool.
All right, yeah. You'll be okay. You'll work it out, I'm sure. You're going to meet some great people on the trail as well. And so you've already told us how you've planned your money for this trip. You've flipped a house and made a lot of money. Do you have to still keep to a budget? Are you planning on a particular budget, or are you just going to spend whatever you need to spend to do it the best way you can do it?
Yeah, I'm planning on not exceeding $1,000 a month is my budget. I've heard from your podcast and from other people that's hopefully enough. So that's my budget.
Yeah, I mean, I met people who do it for much less than that, but also met people who do it for much more than that. And I think you've got to be as comfortable as you can be to do it the way you want to do it. You know, at the end of the day, anybody will tell you you're doing it wrong, you're doing that, this wrong and that wrong. If it's okay for you, that's the way you should be doing it. And I think $1,000 a month it makes it very doable. But once you go into town, there's no question about it. You do hemorrhage money, because you're going to want to eat everything at that stage, and you know just have to be careful of it and make sure you get the balance the way you want it anyway.
Agreed.
And you know the odds. The odds are apparently, and it's quite consistent. Apparently, 1 in 4 people who start this trail finish. What do you think it is about you, Margaret, that makes you think you can beat those odds? In fact, do you think you can beat those odds?
Oh, I definitely will. 100% chance for sure. Oh, yeah. I'm very stubborn, and it's been a dream for so long that I can't imagine not finishing. And I've told so many people now that it would be so embarrassing not to finish. So that shame is motivating as well.
Let me tell you, you've got to get that out of your head straight away. And the reason I say that quite seriously is that it isn't a shame. The mere fact that you go through that arch at the beginning of that trip means you've done it already. You've made the effort. Now, if it doesn't work out for you, it doesn't work out for you. You might hate it. You might really, really hate it. There's absolutely no shame at all in going home if you don't like it. So please beat the odds, but don't beat yourself up if you don't. Just don't worry about it. You know, I'm sure you're a determined person, but you've got to enjoy it if you can, as much as you can. But if you don't enjoy it, don't do it. It's not worth it. Trust me.
Good advice.
I sound like a silly old grandfather. I know. I apologise for that. Now you say you sent me these pictures of this dehydrated beef. Who's going to support you on the trail while you're out there? And how's it going to? What are you going to do? You're going to get stuff sent in packages?
Yeah. So the plan is to make about 3 months worth of just dehydrated dinners and then resupply breakfast and lunch and snacks along the way as my tastes change.
Right.
Yeah, but my boyfriend, who I live with, will be sending me packages along the way. And when he comes to hike certain stretches, he'll bring, a few days of dinners or whatnot.
Nice. So is it he can't come for the whole journey?
Not for the whole thing, but he's planning on coming for 3 different 5 to 7 day stretches of hiking. He actually did the long trail with his dad back in the day. Right. So he has definitely some experience hiking.
It's funny, actually, because we did another podcast with a guy called Bruce Matson, returned to Katahdin last year, and he loved having people come to visit him, but it definitely slows you down because you've got your legs by then and they can't go quite the same pace. And it'd be interesting, I think, for you to meet each other 3 times on the trail. And I'd love to know how that works out for you both, in fact, because that might be quite an interesting part of your hike.
I might have to drag him part of the way.
You may well have to do that. What are you looking forward to about the trail most? Is it a place, or is it, I don't know, is it a town, or is it a view? What are you looking forward to?
Maine.
Oh, really?
I mean, Maine is just, I've heard it's so beautiful with all the lakes and forests and mountains. So Maine is definitely what I'm looking forward to the most out of anything.
It's funny, it's so extraordinary to me that such a beautiful hike comes to its conclusion with the two best states, New Hampshire and then Maine and then Katahdin. And Bruce, once again, talking about RTK, he said it's almost as if this trail was perfectly designed. You have the whole thing culminating in New Hampshire and then the magnificence of Maine. And it's a beautiful thing. And what about the least? What are you looking forward to the least?
Ooh, probably the rocks that I've heard about in northern Pennsylvania. I've heard those aren't too enjoyable. You have more experience about that.
That's they're using kind words. Not too enjoyable doesn't cover it at all. They're a nightmare. They're a nightmare for about 150 miles. So
really?
They're tough. They're tough, but you know what? I wouldn't have it personally. I wouldn't have it any other way. It's just it's a part of the trail. It's hard work and it grinds you down, no doubt about it. But it's Pennsylvania. It's hard. And when you go through Delaware Water Gap and you've finished it, it's a great feeling of achievement. It really is. So, I think enjoy it for all you can, but you will find it tough there, but then everybody else will as well.
And the half-gallon challenge is somewhere in Pennsylvania, right?
Oh God, don't do that. I was sick as a dog. Don't do that.
What flavor did you do?
Oh, God knows. But I'd say God knows, but I can still taste it. So nearly 5 years later. So it was horrible. I mean, I was violently ill for about 2 days. So it was entirely my fault. But that's the way it goes. Yeah. I won't be. One thing I can guarantee already, one big difference in my experience this year will not be to do the half-gallon challenge. I've got my little Victoria spoon at home. I don't need another one, so I'm good to go with that. And if there was one thing that could keep you off the trail at this stage, and it sounds to me the answer is nothing, then what might that be?
I guess just a major injury.
Yeah.
Breaking a leg or something.
Yeah. Every step is a potential disaster, but every step is one step closer to Maine as well. You just keep putting one foot in the other 5 million times, and you get there.
Yeah, my boyfriend's cousin actually hiked the Appalachian Trail, but it took him 2 times because the first time he broke his leg. About halfway through the trail. So that fear is there.
How do you get off?
I'm not sure.
Wow, interesting.
Good question.
So what do you hope to get from this experience when you finish this journey? What do you hope to take away from the trail?
I think just a clearer mindset and a better idea of what's to come in the future and getting back to who I really am. I think it'll just be a really spiritual journey, and I think the people along the way will be instrumental in the way you look at life and the trail and everything.
They really will. And in fact, also, this guy I've just been chatting to, just before I spoke to you, he said, ever since he's got back from the trail, he said, I can't stop talking about it. I said, I've got news for you. You're never going to stop talking about it and boring people about it for the rest of your life. So that's going to happen. You just keep talking about it, and everything you do in your life becomes part. Well, when I was hiking, I did this, or when I was hiking, I did that. It's all.
I feel like it's all I talk about anyway. So I agree.
Yeah. All right. So, the last question is: will you come back on the show and tell us how it went, whether you finish or not?
Yes. Hopefully I'll see you out there if I can catch up with you.
Yeah, no, you'll easily catch up with me. I'll be the fat bloke struggling uphill, so don't worry about that. You'll definitely catch up with me. Well, look, I'm so pleased you reached out to me, and you sound so enthusiastic about it, as you should be, by the way. And I just hope you have a wonderful time. And it's been lovely talking to you, and hopefully we do meet on the trail. And even better, if I can meet up with you and your boyfriend, we can have an interview with the three of us together. It'd be nice.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, well, lovely to talk to you, and hopefully I'll see you out there. Happy trails.
Thanks, Steve.
Oh, before you go, I meant to ask you. I'm going to ask you anyway. Why are you Fireball?
Oh, yeah. So when I did that section of the AT in May, my stove wasn't working. So I screwed it onto the stove, and I turned it upside down and was shaking it and trying to light it at the same time. And
good move.
Yeah, and it worked, but there was a huge eruption of fire, and everybody around the campfire their jaws just dropped, and definitely had some singed hair. And this guy was like, "You're Fireball. That's your name."
I tell you, that is a perfect name. I love it. I really love it. Okay, Fireball. Well, I will see you out there. Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
Cheers, then. Bye. 140 miles to the NOC. Now, that is a shakedown hike. Like all of the class of 2019 hikers, Margaret can hardly wait to get started, and her enthusiasm was quite infectious. Just talking with her ramped up my eagerness to get out there. So, the final group is Nate Stockton, Lotta Anvret, Leanne Hogan, Carlton Johnson, Katie Amflett, Matthew Ansart, Tina Dunway, and me. Obviously, I'll be telling my story while I'm out there, but I'll also be getting into contact either in person or on the phone and letting you know how the others are doing. There are 8 of us in the group, so the stats tell us that just 2 of us are going to finish. Listening to all those eager voices and prepared people, I have a sneaky feeling that our group, the Mighty Blue class of 2019, is going to beat those odds. Hope that you follow us as we move along the trail. And I don't normally ask you to share the show with others, but I hope that you do on Facebook and really anywhere, just so people can follow along with this. It's going to be an awesome adventure, and I want you alongside me every step of the way. And talking about my adventure, I have made some decisions at last. First of all, I truly want to thank all of you who made suggestions for gear. I read every one of them, and I attempted to reply to each of them, but in the end it was down to one factor, and that was the weight of everything. So, at about 8 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday this week, I drove across the Florida hinterland from where I'm staying in Nokomis near Venice, all the way across to the east coast to Melbourne. It was about 180 miles, and I was going there for a measure-up for a Z-Pax Arc Blast backpack. It's only 55 litres and weighs 21 ounces. But when this guy, Jamie, measured me up, he told me that I was a medium torso and large belt. Basically, a fat bloke with an average-length body. Intuitively, I think I would have ordered a long or tall torso, so the drive was well worth it to me. I pitched up at their factory and was greeted at the entrance where I had to look in at all these young people sewing away. I think he told me there were 120 or 140 of them in the factory. There were more tattoos, beards and multicoloured hair than in any factory I have ever seen, but they all seemed happy and sharing a common purpose. It was quite enervating to see this young American company really hard at work. The pack felt wonderful, and while I was in the lightweight mode, I asked Jamie to bring out the tent, which I immediately said I was going to buy. It is almost impossible to imagine that 2 things so light will be 2 of my most vital gear items on the trail. But I'm committed now. You should also know that I'm paying for my own gear, and I'm not being sponsored to say this. I'm going to be ordering online tomorrow, paying full price. Apparently it's a 1-week delivery time. And I told Jamie that I'd give my honest opinions when I'm on the trail. Hopefully you'd expect nothing else. While I was in the mood, I thought I'd add another stop on my way back to Nokomis by heading to Winter Park and REI. There I bought an MSR pocket rocket stove and a little MSR lightweight cook set. I also got some camp soap and twine for hanging my food. Lastly, I needed a new soya squeeze and bought the new micro, having watched a recommendation video by Jennifer Farr Davis in the store. That was good enough for me, so I bought that as well. I've still got to sort out the stuff that I already have, and we'll give you an update next week when things will really be coming together. I'm going to test this all out with a short shakedown hike on the Florida Trail in Ocala sometime towards the end of next week. I'm getting really excited about it now. Lastly, we have the next 3 chapters of The Year We Seize the Day as Ellie and Colin finally reach Santiago. I'll see you next week. Chapter 32, Day 31, Gonza to Melide. Colin, got to get out of Gonza. Next morning we set off at 4:30, stumbling out into the cobbled street. Only it is not empty. Everyone wants to get out of Gonza, and if you ever go there, you will too. The Camino has now degenerated into a race between albergues, a pilgrimathon. They travel in packs. Boy Scout leaders ferry backpacks from albergue to albergue in vans and book ahead. This is not a pilgrimage, it's a battle of wits. I talked to a Spaniard who's travelled all the way from Roncesvalles, as we have, and is now turning back in disgust. Some may call him a purist, but he has a point. In Castañeda, they told us the 12th century lime ovens were once used to make the cement for Santiago's cathedral, and medieval pilgrims each carried a heavy stone all the way from Trecastella for use in these kilns. These days, they don't even carry their own packs. Cyclists zip past shouting "Buen Camino" to pilgrims they have just knocked arse over tit into a hedge. Armies of scouts tramp along like the SS invading Poland. Some sport toy crosses made of pine, and little boys with plastic gourds on sticks and funny hats jump out of cars that have ferried them the whole distance to an albergue so they can walk the last 200 metres. Shops now sell brown felt St James hats, €4 ponchos and Camino t-shirts. All these souvenirs remind me of the English seaside town where I was raised. Day trippers would come down from London and buy kiss-me-quick hats and sticks of rock. We stopped for the night in Melide. The Spaniards sit around complaining about how sore their feet are, competing with each other for the biggest blisters, the worst tendinitis, just as we did back in Pamplona. Long before they get hardened to it, it will all be over for them. Ellie meets a Swiss guy she tells me is cute and falls in love with him for about 10 minutes until he tells her that she has the ugliest feet on the Camino. What a smooth talker. But he's right, she does. Ellie is shattered. She's proud of her feet. They are mangled, bloody, blistered, lumpy and swollen, but they have become icons, symbolic, possibly worth framing.
Ellie. Well, well, well. I wake in the middle of the night in a stairwell. The last 24 hours are a daze, and we've now become homeless in every sense of the word. Cold, wet, tired, hungry, and sleeping on the landing of a warehouse lined with plastic gym mats that someone's decided to call an albergue. Clutching my stomach, I realise things are not quite kosher. Must be the ham. I look left to see Simon, Mercedes and Colin huddled in a tight row beside me. I sit up. Oh, not good. Suddenly I'm scampering across dormant bodies in the dark toward the bathroom. I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. I reach for the door, the light, the toilet seat, my knees. Made it. Yuck. Then repeat the mad dash another 4 times before first light. For hours I heave and cough so hard that I wake several other pilgrims in the next room. By morning my ribs ache. I feel like I did when I was 14 and threw up after a bottle of cheap spumante. The illustrious 2-buck chuck. They don't call it spumante for nothing. Finally I drop off to sleep, exhausted for all of 15 minutes, only to wake up to Colin's hand on my shoulder. He is oblivious to what has happened. It's time to go. I look up at him, shake my head and beg. Not today. He just smiles reassuringly. You'll be right, Tonto. We pack up and set off in silence through the bitter morning chill. Neither of us is having fun anymore.
Colin, the lightweight championship of the world. It is the second last day. The albergue in Melide is so crowded we have to sleep in a stairwell. Ellie is stricken with another virus. In the last month she has battled with a swollen knee, She has no cartilage in it, she told me a week into the journey, the result of a teenage sports injury, a hematoma on a calf, tendinitis, blisters, infections, a virus, fever, dehydration, vomiting, and is possibly still walking with a stress fracture in her foot. It is fascinating to watch the two sides of her battle it out. The side that believes in herself and the side that never has and seems intent on finding new ways of doing her in. It's a heavyweight prize fight between two featherweights, both determined to win. It's not the best night's sleep I've ever had, and when we wake just before dawn, you don't sleep in on a stairwell. Ellie is not looking good. I know she is battling with herself because her voice is barely audible. It ensures she is either misheard, misunderstood, or completely ignored. In Zubiri, I would have put her on the plane and sent her back to Melbourne, but right now I don't care if she has Ebola virus. She's going to get to Santiago tomorrow. I'll piggyback her if I have to.
Ellie. The Ellie Belly Blues. The rain falls heavy from above. The day breaks to a dull grey. The four of us walk single file in silence along a muddy trail as we did for 9 hours straight the day before. Simon and Mercedes lead the way as they did when I was sick on the second day leaving Zubri. But this time I can't see them. The rain is falling so hard against my face it is difficult to see more than a few metres ahead. Beneath the plastic cape of my new poncho, my body shakes with cold and fever. The rain sporadically turns to sleet, then hail, then rain again. The thick scent of the eucalyptus reminds me of home, frosty mornings and childhood winters in rural Victoria. How I wish I were there now, curled beneath the covers of my bed with a bottle of flat lemonade and the wafting scent of my grandmother's chicken noodle soup. Suddenly, memories of all the years since begin to flash through my mind in single frame images, like a slideshow, and in a blink my entire life is reduced to nothing more than a fleeting thought. What does it all really mean? The good times, the hard times, poor decisions, doubt and achievements, sorrow, success, love, loss, family and friendships, even joy. Out here, retching every few steps with the weight of my pack strapped tight around my tender tummy, shivering with cold and cringing with the thought of cow crap grating against the raw flesh of blistered skin, trudging through shit and crying in the rain. Does any of it really matter? To me or anywhere else? Does my life matter? Over the last month, I've learned to trust and believe and even depend on myself daily. I've learned to stand before a mountain and to know that it's mine to climb, to fight when I felt defeated and to trust that somehow I will always get to where I'm going. There have been other experiences in life that have taught me these things too. So why then, at times like these, do I forget, doubt, question, and feel so weak, so small, so insignificant? Why am I so forgiving of others, yet not of myself? How many times will I learn to stand so strong before forgetting it at times like these? Why do I think so much? Do other people think like this? Is it normal? Am I normal? What's the point? I sob quietly beneath the hood of my poncho, caught somewhere in the maelstrom of exhaustion, delirium, dehydration, viral infection, pain, and premenstrual tension, feeling weak, weary, sick, sad, and sorry for myself. Yet in hindsight, it will be hilariously pathetic, I'm sure. But here, so close and yet still so far from the end, it is hideous, and suddenly it hits me. After 32 days on the trail with all its blood, sweat, tears, isolation, deprivation, injury, revelation, fear, faith and sufferance, my pilgrimage comes back to this, as it has done time and time again throughout my life. Self-doubt. I am back on the bus in Roncesvalles, full circle. Have I learned nothing? I remember the line I wrote in the monastery outside Pamplona. Each and every step makes me stronger, without and within, and decide to stop thinking and keep moving. Colin walks 2 steps behind as I shuffle on, hitching my pants every second step, his elastic camping clothes line tied through the belt loops to hold them up. For the rest of that afternoon, every time I stop, wondering if I can go on, Cole places a steady hand beneath my pack, takes the weight from my shoulders, and together we walk a few steps more. Colin has stopped carrying his stick. Instead, today, he carries me.
Chapter 33. Day 32. Melide to Santa Irene. Colin. counting the beats. I had planned to take my walking stick to Finisterre and toss it in the ocean, as is the tradition. Instead, it starts to rain, and I need a spare hand to hold my ripped poncho together. Suddenly, the walking stick is a burden. Like regrets, like old habits, how many times have I walked through my life with baggage I didn't need? I drag it with me as I have every damn thing I no longer need in my life, but have kept with me as part of my perfect picture. Suddenly, it hits me. The damn thing is useless. Why didn't I see it before? It no longer fits me or me it. It's time to stop before I smash it in fury against a tree. If I leave it by the track, some other pilgrim may have use of it. I've pounded out the beat of the Maseda with this stick. There are no more beats. I've counted them all. Me and the stick are over. We walk on endless trails through pine woods and eucalyptus. The rain hasn't let up. There are tall stands of blue gum dripping with rain, and the scent of eucalyptus hangs in the air like mist. It reminds me of the forests of Australia in winter. There are dairy farms and prosperous villages, all sodden with rain. The day passes like delirium. Every albergue is full of Spanish Boy Scouts, and it's close to dark when we finally reach an albergue where the hostelero has given up trying to maintain any semblance of order and just lets everyone in. He tells us we can sleep wherever we can find room. The only place we can find room is in the kitchen, so we sleep there. Next morning I wake with a headache and fever. My eyeballs feel twice their normal size. A German student with thighs like sides of pork is standing over me making porridge on the kitchen range. Ellie is asleep on the kitchen table. There is someone sleeping underneath it, and the German guy is about to eat his breakfast off her stomach. I've had enough. I get up, throw a hissy fit at the German student, curse her unborn children and her cat, and sit on the stairs waiting for the others to hurry up so we can just leave. I feel like death. Yes, the Camino has finally taught me patience, humility, and forbearance. I knew I was here to learn something. Chapter 34, Day 33. Santa Irene to Monte d'Orgozo.
Ellie, the lesser of evils. Yesterday a stairwell, today a kitchen table. But before I even open my eyes, I realise how close we are to Santiago, and that this will be the last serious day's walk for a very long time. Although I feel better, the vomiting and nausea have passed. I open my eyes to find Colin shivering and holding his head. He looks like I felt yesterday. Why am I in a kitchen? Who's lying underneath me? Why is this cold wooden table so wonderfully comfortable? And what's that guy doing with his porridge? We pack up and move out. Mercedes wraps her arms around my waist, tucking her little Spanish self under my wing on the way out of the door, reminding me the end is in sight. But the moment we step out onto the road, it becomes painfully apparent that the Camino is going to make us work for every wet, heavy, cold, muddy, and miserable last step. The ground sinks underfoot. We are walking in torrential rain and gale-force winds. An hour through a forest of pine, oak, and eucalyptus, the packs on our backs are acting as sails, tossing us across the path from one side to the other. Towering gum trees sway ominously above. Today's destination is Monte d'Orgozo, the Hill of Joy, but there will be little joy in getting there. What would typically take 3 hours will take us twice as long now. It's hard to believe the breathless heat of the Meseta is just 1 week distance. I never thought I'd wish it back.
Colin, Hill of Joy. We set off in a howling gale. Weak and feverish, I keep my head down, follow Ellie's feet. She has one foot wrapped in a blue plastic bag, the other in a green. She may look weird, but this is not a fashion parade, and if you don't stop the water getting through your socks, you get blisters, and blisters are still the archenemy, even at this late stage. We are part of a procession now, an invading army. Once I look back in the rain, it's like the attack of the killer condoms, people wrapped in blue and green and red waterproofs as far down the muddy ridge as I can see. We reach a ridge next to Santiago Airport. A jet reaches tentatively for the tarmac as a gust of wind picks up this particular coloured condom and nearly sends him freewheeling into the turbines. Thunder cracks overhead like an artillery salvo, and rain stings my face like a handful of sand. This is not part of my perfect picture. I once imagined us entering the cathedral plaza in bright sunshine to the cheering of an ecstatic grandstand full of fervent and awed Spanish Catholics, there to have a medal hung round my neck by the Pope himself, like the World Cup final. Instead, here in the middle of a European summer, the toilet of Spain is bleak and grey and windswept. I realise that tomorrow we will pile into Santiago with thousands of other coloured killer condoms, line up for days to get our passports stamped so we can get a discount on our train fare, then hurry off to find somewhere to sleep that's better than a kitchen table, a stairwell or a barbecue pit. Today, I keep walking because the only other choice is to lie down and die, and that is not on my agenda until tomorrow or perhaps even the day after. And also, I want to see Ellie walk into the square in Santiago. Even if the Pope isn't there to put a medal around her neck, after all this, I know I'm going to enjoy seeing her do it. After the airport, we enter Lavacolla. Its name apparently means to wash one's loins. So, roughly translated, it's Soap the Genitalsville. What a nice address to have if you're from these parts, so to speak. It is so named because this was the place where medieval pilgrims finally, after months of walking, sweating and whoring, splashed some fresh water onto their groin area to cleanse themselves before entering the holy city. Soon after, we get to Monte de Gozo, the Hill of Joy, where these same genitally fragrant pilgrims got their first glimpse of the cathedral spire. Monte de Gozo does not have such an inspirational view now. A TV station dominates the hill, and all you can see are busy highways and unattractive suburbs. Today we can't even see those. In fact, I can barely see a hand in front of my face. The rain is so dense. There is no albergue, just a vast holiday camp, row upon row of barrack dormitories, shops, cafes and restaurants. Pilgrim City. From here it's just a stroll down the hill to Santiago. An hour or so. Our journey is done. We walk into our appointed dorm. All I can smell is socks, and the showers are overflowing. Good-o. I don't give a shit about Santiago. I'm not sure I ever did. I don't care about the cathedral or about Jimmy the Fish, but I do give a shit about not having to walk anymore. I want to see Ellie win, and I want to deliver a prayer, as I promised myself I would. I have carried it into every church, repeated it until I know every damn word by heart. The woman who wrote it never asked for me to do it, but a prayer's a prayer, and I said it anyway, and whatever anyone thinks of that doesn't matter. When this is done, I'll leave it up to those gods on the other side of the ocean to pick up the pieces and make up their minds what it all means.
Ellie, leper in lace. At last, finally, the sprawl of Santiago appears in the distance. The cloud cover is thick and barely broken, but as if scripted in a B-grade film, a single ray of sunlight suddenly bursts through a tear in the clouds to light the city centre. I turn to Colin. He looks worn and weary, worse than he did 2 days ago in Alto de Pollo, a man on his final legs. We both laugh. We have become pitiable in appearance. I am a patchwork melange of plastic bags and band-aids. He's huddled beneath his poncho, shivering with cold. His teeth chatter and the hair on his bare legs stand erect. But still, through his tight grimace, he manages a grin. Not of joy, but of relief. The fact that he is so sick doesn't matter to him now, nor does my foot matter to me. The swell of infection is hovering just below the knee, which is also swollen with tendinitis. The bottom half of my left leg looks like an oversized German salami, puffed up and stained pink. But the rain, the hail, the mud, the fact that we have not worn dry clothes or eaten a decent meal in 4 days, none of it matters with Santiago in sight. We're nearly there. From Monte de Gozo, we are just 4.5 kilometres remaining until our journey is complete. And despite the circumstance or how long it takes for us to get there, I'm determined to enjoy every bitter step of what is left. When you are already this wet, sore and miserable, what do you possibly have left to lose? We'd heard it pegged as a holiday resort, a type of utopia. In the Middle Ages, perhaps it was. This is where the real pilgrims in their capes and worn leather sandals toasted port wine around a campfire overlooking the brilliant spires of the Compostela. But a lot changes in 1,000 years, and today Monte de Gozo feels like stepping into the athletes' village of a past Olympics. Set on a hillside, a paved walkway joins rows of dormitories on either side. A food hall, bar, laundromat, gift shops, internet cafe, medical facility, adjoining function rooms and hotel. 650,000 square metres of commercial cash generators. Not so much a hill of joy as a hill of hefty price tags and vending machines. It feels strange, manufactured. Not particularly bad, just different than expected. And as a result, a tad disappointing. I suppose that in itself has been a strong theme for me here. No aspect of the experience has been expected. Time and time again along the way, the Camino has taught me to abandon expectations, not to value them. Why should the end be any different? Still, I had hoped that the Monte de Gozo would at least serve as a meeting point for the many of the friends we had met along the way. The old crew from the trail, Jody, Petra, Jonas, they had all planned to spend their final night here celebrating before heading to Santiago. Instead, arriving at Monte de Gozo feels bizarre. We are strangers among the newcomers. Without a word, Colin disappears. Simon and Mercedes have an argument, go their separate ways, and I, predictably, wander off to find the medical clinic. Walking alone down the paved open corridor towards the clinic, not one of the new pilgrims I pass returns my holas. Not one familiar or friendly face among the bunch. Instead, they glance at me and shy away as I have while passing bag ladies in city streets. In the clinic, I greet the woman behind the counter, and rather than battling through in Spanish, I lift my leg to show her the problem. No translation needed. Immediately, she jumps up and rushes to get a doctor, bypassing two other pilgrims already waiting, and sends me straight through to one of the cubicles. Seconds later, a female doctor arrives in a rush, looks at my feet, grabs my arm, and marches me across the hall to a ground-level wash trough and basin. I showered just minutes before, but it is as if I've shown up with leprosy. She leaves, ordering me to wash my feet. When I'm done, two young nurses appear and take an arm each to escort me back to the cubicle. I'm surprised by the fuss. The three stand looking grief-stricken and shake their heads in resignation, patch me up and send me off with antibiotics and strict instructions to attend the clinic the following day in Santiago. They offer me crutches on the way out. 2 weeks ago, during the feast day of St. James's celebrations, when Colin and I walked through the desert night, Lou Reed, Massive Attack, Bob Dylan, Iggy Pop, The Cure, The Cause and Red Hot Chili Peppers played here, to thousands across a 3-day festival. How different the night would have been if we'd left a little sooner, walked a little faster, been a little less disabled along the way. But that evening, Colin and I meet for a quiet drink in a corner of a smoky bar. It's a modest and low-key event between friends. In a way, appropriate for the journey we've all but completed together. After a few rounds and laughs, I leave Colin and return to my room. I sit up on the end of my bunk bed, still trying to comprehend the occasion. I can see Santiago in the distance less than 5 kilometres away, but despite the view, my mind will not accept the fact that we've arrived. Day after day, for more than a month, it has been a distant goal, a dream. Though it is now so close, it still sits far in my mind, and will remain that way until I see it, in a single view, my own feet before the front doors of the cathedral. Then, and only then, will it be real. I look down at my gammy feet and marvel at the distance they've carried me so far. 800 kilometres across an entire country, the second largest in Europe. I remember the day when walking just a few metres down our driveway to collect the mail was an occasion worth celebrating. And we did. I was supposed to have died less than a week before. I had been rushed to hospital late at night, suffering hypothermia, massive internal damage and threatening cardiac arrest. An ECG showed I'd already gone into heart failure while sleeping through the night 2 days before. My mother stood helpless by my bedside, watching the nurses' futile attempts to insert a drip into my collapsing veins. It was, they said, a final attempt to keep me alive. I was 21. As the medical staff raced around frantically trying to save me, I lay on a gurney, completely unperturbed by the commotion. By then I'd lost almost half my body weight. With it, too, much of my hair, hearing and cognitive function. I disconnected from the world. I couldn't speak. I could barely think or breathe. Though I could see, I couldn't hear or feel anything anymore. And at that point, I didn't care. I'd been so sick for so long, I didn't want to live. I'd forgotten how. Tired of the struggle, I was just relieved by the prospect that once and for all it might soon be over. That's what anorexia does to a person. People think it's about weight, but it's not. I didn't want to be thin. I was so sad I wanted to die. Losing weight was just one of the many symptoms that followed. My mother broke down on hearing the doctor's final diagnosis. Too much damage had occurred. There was nothing more they could do to save me. I am not the same person now who once lay defeated, wishing for death, 6 years ago. It feels like another world, and in many ways another lifetime. It's hard to even relate to that lost little soul lying on a hospital bed preparing to die. But I do still remember how it felt to be trapped in a body riddled with such pain. I promised I would not forget. I can't tell you what it was that turned it around. It happened in a single night. The doctors can't explain it either, and neither can I. They say life turns on a dime, and so it seems does death. An epiphany, perhaps. A miracle? Whatever it was a gift sent from somewhere that until then I never knew existed. Suddenly, as my mother had assured me all along, regardless of what I had become, I believed that there was still something left inside worth fighting for. I knew I could live, but not in the state or mind frame that I was in, and that was something no one else could possibly change but me. Once I had made that decision, made up my mind and chosen life, as difficult as the years of treatment and physical rehabilitation promised to be, the rest would be, as Santiago is now, a formality. It's no surprise that physical health has played such a prominent role throughout the past 33 years. After all, that is the nature of the way, the very point, and possibly the reason I was called here. A reflection of life, to repeat and review. Perhaps Colin and I both came here needing to shed our shadows to make peace with the past and move on. I know I did. You can leave a history behind, but to write a new future for yourself is a different story. However you have lived, you will walk, and in your time here, all will be returned. The Camino is your life, no doubt. Laid out before you to pace and repeat. Your tools here are your lessons, the things you've learned throughout your life, and your challenge to trust and believe that you have all you need to make it to your destination. Of course, a pair of Jesus sandals and a good stick help too. 6 years ago, when faced with the challenge of starting over, I promised myself that despite how overwhelming or impossible the years ahead appeared, each and every step along the way would somehow make me stronger. Every day I chanted, wrote, and reminded myself of that until I believed it. There were days when the thought alone was the only thing that got me through, but eventually, in time, it did. It may take a while for Colin and me to fully comprehend or understand the significance of our journey here, or exactly what to conclude from the experiences of the Camino. But I at least know that, as before, each and every step I have taken along the way has made me stronger and contributed somehow to who I am. The city lights outside my window shine brightly on a distant horizon against the backdrop of night. I take a small bottle from my backpack and, hanging my feet over the edge of the bed, spend time painting my toenails, dodging wads of gauze tape and dressing. Then I pull the lace underwear I washed and kept safe for the occasion from the plastic seal in a front pocket and lay it out on the bed before me. This journey has become far more significant than a city, but Santiago is still the end of our trek across Spain, and arriving tomorrow will mark the realization of an achievement I will hold dear for a very, very long time. I may look a little worn around the edges, a tad shabby, and slight the worse for wear, but with bright red toenails and black lace beneath my tattered clothes and bandaged feet, I will at the very least arrive in style.